The majority of residential school records for Indigenous children no longer exist.
Tonight, experts say many residential school records are already lost.
It's alarming and it's disheartening, and for those people who are experiencing homelessness.
Plus, grim statistics on homelessness in Whitehorse.
It's a real sense of accomplishment. You know, you'll start something and you finish it and you're like, wow, I made that.
And tufting caribou fur sparks creativity in the north. Good evening, Tansayanin. Welcome to APTN National News. I'm Daryl Stranger. First Nations were in Ottawa on Wednesday to voice their opposition to Bill C-53. The legislation formally recognizes Métis governments in Alberta, Ontario, and Saskatchewan. But organizations like the Chiefs of Ontario take particular issue with the Trudeau government's recognition of the Métis Nation of Ontario. APTN's Fraser Needham has more.
Build a bill on the hill. We march!
The message was loud and clear. First Nations gathered on Parliament Hill on Wednesday to say Bill C-53 has to go because it recognizes the Métis Nation of Ontario, who the Chiefs of Ontario say represents illegitimate Métis communities with no historical basis and do not meet the legal threshold to be recognized as having rights.
It recognizes a Métis presence in our territories that historically, for determining who is a Métis person, has not been done.
Temagami First Nation Chief Shelley Moore-Frappier agrees the Liberals did not do their homework before drafting the legislation.
Absolutely, the government has made a major error. There has been no consultation with First Nations. As a Temiagama Anishinaabe, in a document on our homeland, we know that we are the only sole bearing Indigenous right holders in our homeland.
NDP MP Blake Desjardins, who himself is Métis, also says the process that led to Bill C-53 is flawed.
Before we get to the legislation, there's actually the process discussion, how the government has absorbed or listened to claims of Indigenous groups. That process is flawed, and it's really a brutal one. It's one that says we'll recognize this group over this group, and we'll pick winners and losers.
Métis Nation of Ontario President Margaret Froh says the legislation only affirms rights Métis people already have and really doesn't change much.
Bill C-53 is really clear. It does not have any impact on anyone other than our Métis governments and our citizens. So we are continuing to reach out to provide accurate information about our self-government agreements and the legislation.
But not so, says McLeod.
So to say that it's only dealing with governance is also misleading. If you go to their website, they talk about land, they talk about resources. They're already lobbying industry for impact benefits agreements in our territories.
Moore-Frappier says if the Liberals push ahead with the legislation, it will be problematic.
I think that they're going to be setting reconciliation back 100 years. We're looking at they need to consult First Nations and though we have the established rights. Really, what we're looking at is established rights being subordinate to these assertions.
Bill C-53 goes to committee this fall. Fraser Needham, APTN National News, Ottawa.
The Senate Committee on Indigenous Peoples is hearing from organizations about Indian residential school records. A panel of experts presented to the Senate this week about the records of children who went to Indian residential schools. Experts told the committee that there are big gaps in records, and they believe many of the documents may have been destroyed. The missing records, dating back to 1936, affected thousands of claims for Indian residential school compensation and may have an impact on being able to trace how many children did not make it home. Researcher Ed Sadowski has been working on obtaining records for decades.
The majority of residential school records for Indigenous children no longer exist. This issue came into focus during the implementation of the Indian Residential School Settlement Agreement and continues to this day. Records for the Timber Bay Indian Residential School, the Ile-à-la-Crosse Boarding School, the Fort William Indian Hospital Sanatorium School, and many other Indian hospital schools were some of the institutions that were rejected and whose records were destroyed by Canada prior to the settlement agreement.
In New Brunswick, 9 Mi'kmaq communities and a number of environmental groups are continuing their legal challenge against a proposed offshore oil and gas project. Bay du Nord is a potential $16 billion oil and gas project off the coast of Newfoundland. This was last spring in Ottawa, outside federal court. Members of Sierra Club Canada protesting the Liberal government's 2022 approval of the oil and gas project. This week, Eco-Justice, an environmental law firm, filed an appeal to the Federal Court of Appeal. It comes after their case was dismissed by the federal court last June. A coalition of 9 Mi'kmaq communities in New Brunswick are also part of the coalition. They say the risk of oil spills poses a threat to Atlantic salmon.
All we want is a fair and equal opportunity to be heard, to be taken seriously, and hopefully, the powers that be in this land of ours come to their senses and rule in favor, for the environment, for the well-being of not just the Mi'kmaq, but everyone.
A recent count of homeless people in Whitehorse found 90% of people experiencing homelessness are Indigenous. Those numbers come from an April 2023 point-in-time count by the Reaching Home Community Advisory Board. Over the course of a 24-hour period, close to 200 people were found to be experiencing homelessness in Yukon's capital city. 65 people were emergency sheltered at one of 3 local shelters. The 2023 count saw the highest number of Indigenous respondents since the first count in 2018. Advocates say the data shows the territory isn't making strides to reduce homelessness.
It's alarming and it's disheartening. And for those people who are experiencing homelessness, it's obviously a day-to-day reality that they are very well aware of.
A new program is helping preserve the Blackfoot language while teaching locals and visitors about the region's history. The new Blackfoot language signage program invited communities, businesses, and institutions from across the region to apply for up to $2,000 towards the cost of sign construction at their location. The pilot project is in partnership between the Kainai Nation, South Grow Regional Initiative, Community Futures Lethbridge Region, and Tourism Lethbridge. The project aims to bring the Blackfoot names back to life while teaching the community of their history.
We often forget that we're sitting on top of tens of thousands of years of history, and that the history of the land that we live in, that's our home, is a lot deeper than just our European history of the past 100 to 150 years of development. And it's a way that we can visibly put that mark on the landscape, inviting people to dive deeper. Because we've got great tourism assets here in southern Alberta, and tourism is a booming industry.
If the program gets refunded in 2024, organizers hope to see it expand to cover all Blackfoot Confederacy territory. To learn more or to apply, you can visit lethbridgeregion.com, albertacf.com. All right, a short break is upon us. When we return, a leadership event for Indigenous women draws crowds in Winnipeg.
I wanted to create a collective where Indigenous women feel empowered in roles of leadership.
Welcome back to APTN National News. Indigenous women in business from across North America gathered in Winnipeg this week for the Indigenomics She Conference. Attendees were able to network and learn skills that can help make a positive financial impact on their communities. Tamara Pimentel has more.
Indigenous women who are leaders in economic development, finance, and entrepreneurship filled this room at the Fairmont Hotel in Winnipeg for the second annual Indigenomics She Conference.
Of Indigenous participation in the economy.
Carol Ann Hilton is the founder and CEO of the Indigenomics Institute. It supports the growth and development of Indigenous economies.
The goal is for women to build an ecosystem of common experiences, support what perseverance and resilience looks like.
The two-day conference gave Indigenous women from all over North America a chance to network, sell artwork, and take part in workshops.
Speaking to these very personal experiences,
Sage Lacerte started Sage Initiative, the only Indigenous women's impact investment collective in Canada. For her, it's about bringing wealth and knowledge back to Indigenous communities.
I wanted to create a collective where Indigenous women feel empowered in roles of leadership, being role models in their community, and being able to take the knowledge that we learn and apply it across their community so everyone else can experience that wealth as well.
Lacerte held a workshop on Indigenous wealth dynamics with Afro-Indigenous financial advisor Yamila Franco.
It's so important that more people in my community have opportunities to be financially secure, because I see that as something that can enable and empower people to make better decisions for their generations to come, to start businesses, to have opportunities for social impact.
Over 30 Indigenous women shared their experience at the conference. Hilton says the growing narrative is expected to skyrocket over the next decade.
Canadian history denied our place at the economic table, but we're rebuilding that space, and we're doing it through business. And business isn't an outcome, it's a tool that I think our communities, our families, and Indigenous women are picking up and utilizing to help build our future.
Tamara Pimentel, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
And we'll have more on that conference on the new season of APTN in Focus. A critically acclaimed drama told through the eyes of a Cree matriarch is hitting the small screen this week. A new 5-part miniseries on the 2022 feature film Bones of Crows will premiere on APTN September the 20th. The multi-generational Indigenous saga follows the turbulent life of Cree matriarch Alyn Spears. Featuring Sequepum actress Grace Dove, the series uses Spears' story to showcase the generational impact of abuse experienced by Indigenous people in Canada. Writer and director Mary Clements says the series will take a closer look at Spears' character and her family.
We do get to see and expand and kind of breathe out a lot of the storylines on things that we didn't get to do in the feature. So we get to see more of her husband's story and her her sister's story and brother's story and her kid's story and even her grandchild. So it really just kind of expands the way family stories do.
Now you can also catch the new series in English on APTN Lumi on September the 21st, so tomorrow, and a Cree premiere will be available on Lumi on September the 26th. Stellar, the latest film from Anishinaabe filmmaker Darlene Naponce, is set to open in theaters across Canada this Friday. The film stars award-winning actor Elmaya Tailfeathers and is described as a contemporary Indigenous romance unlike any other. For more, we're joined by director Darlene Naponce. Darlene, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to speak with us today. First off, can you tell us a bit about Stellar and how it all came to be?
Yes, miigwech for your time. Stellar is a love story, and it really came from wanting to explore just about relationships, about kind of brokenness and finding hope through love.
And the film had its world premiere last year at the Toronto International Film Festival, but it's now about to open in cities around Canada. What's been the reaction to the film?
It's been really lovely and it's been really positive. When we were creating this, it was a real collaboration and in a way that, the ideas on the page. But when we started talking, especially with like Elamaya Tailfeathers and Braden and creating these characters and allowing them to just be from their pasts in the present and trying to find ways to connect, ways to, to break that brokenness and to find that love. And so I think that the audiences resonated with that and saw really what was happening and really found that hope and beauty, even though that we were talking about real issues that we see every day, the explorations in the land, how, in our areas have been just scarred so much, and so much has been taken from us in our homes, in our communities. But yet there's these two beautiful people who are just trying to find themselves and let love be.
Mm-hmm. And Darlene, your previous film Falls Around Her featured some of the legends in Indigenous cinema, and Stellar features some of the future legends of the industry. Have you seen a shift in the Canadian film industry in the 4 or 5 years between those films?
Yeah, no, definitely. And it's really beautiful. There was a lot of resistance around perspective of First Nations cinema. And so there's an amazing I'm gonna say I was like just like a crop, but it was like this amazing community, and we often call it the film family, but of young filmmakers and filmmakers who have been doing this for so long and have been paving the paths and who are creating from their communities and who are creating from their voices and making really important stories, and is changing the landscape of Canadian cinema and Indigenous cinema in a really positive way.
Well, Darlene, I know I can't wait to see Stellar, so we'll have to leave it there, but thank you again so much, Miigwech, to you for coming on and sharing a bit of your thoughts with us.
Naha Miigwech, thank you.
And sticking with film, Killers of the Flower Moon actors Leonardo DiCaprio and Lily Gladstone are featured on the cover of the October edition of British Vogue. The Martin Scorsese movie is based on the historic Osage Nation murders in Oklahoma during the 1920s. Oil discoveries led to sudden wealth for members of the nation who were tricked, swindled, and even murdered for their land. Gladstone is Namipu from the Blackfeet Reservation in Montana and stars alongside DiCaprio. Gladstone showcased some Native American designers during the cover shoot. Jamie Okuma and Pat Pruitt collaborated on earrings featured during the spread. The British Vogue cover with Gladstone and DiCaprio will hit newsstands on September the 26th. All right, it's time for one final break here on the show. Photo of the day and weather are next. Plus, the art of caribou fur tufting comes to a new generation.
You're gonna come up right through the middle. And then you're gonna go down pretty close beside it to make a loop.
Welcome back. It's time now for our photo of the day. Greg Scriber took this photo of a beautiful sunset sky reflecting like a mirror off the water at Petrie Island in Ottawa, Ontario. That is an amazing photo, Greg. Thanks so much for sharing that. And we want to see your photos. Email share@aptn.ca and you could be our next photo of the day. All right, now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Beginning on the East Coast, at 10 in St. John's and 18 in showers in Halifax. 12 degrees in Kuujjuaq and 8 in Happy Valley Goose Bay. 21 in Clear, Quebec City, and 22 in Clear in Montreal. 26 degrees in Windsor and 23 in North Bay. 24 degrees in Timmins and 21 up in Big Trout Lake. Clear and 13 in Churchill and clear and 20 in God's Lake. Mix of sun and cloud and 21 in Barons River and 20 in Winnipeg. 22 degrees in Regina and 21 in Saskatoon. 19 degrees in Buffalo Narrows and 18 in Stony Rapids. As we continue west, the 19 up in Fort Chipewyan and clear 19 in Peace River. Clear 19 as well in Edmonton and 20 degrees in Medicine Hat. 21 degrees and sunshine in Campbell River and 18 in Quesnel. 18 degrees in Smithers and 21 in Fort Nelson. 11 degrees in Beaver Creek and 10 over in Whitehorse. 21 in Clear in Fort Simpson and 17 in Norman Wells. 8 degrees in Inuvik and 12 in Colville Lake. 5 degrees in Cambridge Bay and 10 in Chesterfield. 3 degrees in Igloolik and 0 in Clyde River. During a community baseball tournament this past weekend, Gwich'in members were learning to sew and bead. Video journalist Carly Jogner spoke with one local artist, educator, as she explains the basics of Caribou tufting and what entrepreneurism has brought to her.
For me, being Tetla Gwich'in, we are very connected to the Caribou. My name is Jessica Francis. I'm from Fort McPherson, and I have a sewing business called Yakai Creations. We are at the Chief Julius School in Fort McPherson for an Arts Appreciation Night. We're doing caribou hide, caribou fur earring tufting. You're going to come up right through the middle. And then you're going to go down pretty close beside it to make a loop. It's a real sense of accomplishment. You know, you'll start something and you finish it and you're like, wow, I made that. And then you're going to take your fur and you're going to take a section. Just big enough to fit through your little loop here. And then you're going to cut it close to your skin. Some of it is really connecting because our ancestors did caribou fur tufting a lot in the past, and I think that that's really great that it's coming back and getting more popular. And with this bundle here, it's going to go through your loop. Through your loop, right about here, and then you're just going to pull it tight as you can. And then it'll make the tuft. And you see a lot of artists using it in their own art. So I like that we were able to share it tonight. And 4 new participants, 4 new people got to learn. And the tricky part is keeping all that pressure on the thread while also tying it. And then once that's done, then you'll take small scissors and you'll trim it. Modern tufting is done with a beaded edge around it. And that beaded edge is your guideline. But traditional tufting, like the old original tuftings, didn't have the beads around it. It was just freehand shapes. So you'll get your basic shape, and then you'll trim down the body. Just slow at a time until you find a length that you like. When it's more long like this, it'll be kind of fuzzy. But once you trim it down to a good length, it'll be more firm, and you'll see all the different little tufts on it. Like that. Even if you think, oh, I've never beaded before, I've never made anything before, like this is the perfect opportunity to learn, and you'll get somebody to show you step by step what to do. And oftentimes you get to go home with little goodie bags, so then you can finish on your own.
All right, that is all we have tonight on APTN National News. And just a reminder, the Bones of Crows premiere will air on APTN tonight, and I'm told it will be commercial free, so make sure you check that out. For all of us here, thank you so much for joining us. Miigwech, Kinanaskamatin, and have a great night.